Okay, good morning everyone, and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Sunday morning as we are in the weeks between Pesach and Shavuot, and as well a happy Pesach Sheni to everyone. Happy Pesach Sheni. Hashem should bless us all on this beautiful holiday that we should be zocheh to fulfill it be'atid in the future the right way with the Beit HaMikdash b'mirabi Amenu. Amen. Okay, here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh l'varo. Let's jump right in. As we are studying Pirkei Avot, and we are here studying Mishnah number 4, chapter 1, Mishnah number 4. If you have it, please open it up. Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzereda. The next piece of advice is coming from a rabbi by the name of Yossi ben Yoezer and another rabbi, Yossi ben Yohanan. These were two rabbis that received from Antignos. Okay, what do they want to teach us? Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzereda omer. Yossi Ben Yoezer teaches us the following. Yehi betcha bet va'ad lachachamim. Let your house be a place of gathering for the rabbis. Okay, so over here, Yossi Ben Yoezer is encouraging us to allow our homes to be accessible and open to rabbis, to allow rabbis to come in. If rabbis need to have a place that they can sit and study, to have maybe an attic or a room or a place. Of course, today we have a Bet Midrash. We have today study halls that rabbis go and study. I don't think a rabbi is going to be knocking on your door and saying, "Hey, do you mind if I learn with my chavruta in your house?" You know, that's not going to really happen today. However, we can still fulfill this mitzvah of allowing our house to be a place of gathering for chachamim. You know how? By having sfarim in our house. When we have a library, when we have holy books, when we have Torah books on our bookshelves. So now the Rambam we know is alive. The Rambam lives through his books. Rashi, the Gaon Mevilna, all the tzaddikim, they're alive through their works. So when we have these books in our houses, now our homes become a place of gathering for Rav Akiva Eiger, for Chacham Ovadia Yosef, for all the Gedolim, and the rabbis that are on our bookshelves are, so to speak, in our houses. So that is a very nice way of fulfilling this Mishnah. And of course, why am I encouraged to allow rabbis in my house to study? What's the point? Of course, the goal over here is that at the end of the day, we have to remember, if we want our kids, a lot of times a person comes and says, "Rabbi, my kids are alienated from the Torah. My kids are not connected to the Torah. They're not learning well. They don't see the beauty." We have to ask ourselves, have we served as proper role models, as parents for our children to want to follow that path of life? At the end of the day, we have to remember that our children want to be like us. If our children don't see us learning Torah, then they're not going to want to learn Torah. If our children don't see us excited to have rabbis, our children are not going to be excited to have rabbis. There's a frightening story said over with a man who once came to the rabbi, and he says, "Rabbi, I need your help. My son, he's getting married to a goya. Can you please speak to him?" The rabbi says, "Okay, I'll try to do what I can." It's amazing how sometimes people are so negligent in their duties as parents when it comes to religion. For 25 years, they care zero about religion. The only thing that they ever did was a bris and a bar mitzvah. They did nothing in between. And all of a sudden, when he comes home with the goya, we're wondering why. I don't understand. Why we don't do this. And we instilled zero time and effort into the Jewish education of our children. We put zero emphasis in the house on the laws of Shabbat and kosher. The only thing that we ever did that was Jewish was, again, the milestones of a bris and a bar mitzvah. And all of a sudden, for 25 years, we're negligent, we do nothing. And then when they come home with a goya, we expect a rabbi in 30 minutes to change everything and to make it all better and to fix it. "Rabbi, here you go, fix my son." Anyways, the rabbi, he says, "Listen, I'll do what I can." He sits down with this guy for an hour, 2 hours. He's trying to explain to him, you marry a goya, you're going to lose everything. And the guy walks out. The man comes back an hour later. He says, "Rabbi, what kind of rabbi are you? He didn't change his mind." And the rabbi looks at this gentleman. He says, "Let me ask you a question. Every Shabbat, you come to synagogue. You hear my sermon. What do you do when you go home? Every week you go home, I know what you do. You don't have to answer that question. You go home and you tell your family, Rabbi, this week, what a clown he was. He spoke about this. What a silly thing. He's too extreme. He doesn't understand the people. He's a little bit tough. He's not with it. So for 25 years on the Shabbat table, all your kids heard from your mouth how the rabbi is zero, the rabbi is nothing. We don't have to listen to the rabbi. And all of a sudden, when you send your son to me to speak to him, what's he doing? He's doing exactly what you taught him. He's not listening to the rabbi. It's your fault. And therefore, we have to be very careful to make sure that we are serving ourselves as proper role models for our children. If we're always complaining, it's too hot, it's too cold, we go to a hotel, we're complaining about the accommodations, about the room, about the service, then guess what? Our kids are going to all grow up knowing how to do one thing. They're going to complain. If we're always disrespectful, if we're impatient, our kids are watching. We have to be very careful. Urge us, our rabbis, and they say, make sure, Yehi betcha betvad lachachamim. You like rabbis. Maybe you're connected to rabbis. Maybe you're going to learn all day. But that's not enough. Not enough to go learn. Bring the rabbis to your house, so to speak. Make sure your children see it. Make sure your children witness it through you. I remember when I was studying in Kollel and I was learning at night in a certain place. And I remember I was learning at home, and I remember that a certain opportunity came to go learn in the synagogue at night. And I was very excited because that meant to go learn wasn't just to go learn. They were willing to pay people to come learn in the synagogue every single night. And I could easily have used the cash at the time, getting paid peanuts in Kollel. Every dollar helps. You're rubbing pennies together just to make it to the end of the month. So I went to my wife. I was very excited. Said it sounds like a good idea. And of course I asked my rabbi. My rabbi always had wisdom for me. I went to my rabbi. I said, Rabbi, listen, there's a place opening up at night. And I'm very excited because I could go learn. Is there anything wrong with going to learn just because I want to also get the extra money? I'm learning at home, but I could go learn in the shul the same things and I can make money out of it. And my rabbi told me, he says, you can't go. I said, why? Because it's not because I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. He says, no, it's not because of that. He says, but right now, your children see you every night learning in the house. You accept this job, your children won't see you learning. They don't know that daddy learns. They don't know how much you love Torah. You're going to go into the Bet Midrash and study over there. Where are your kids? Where is your kids' role model going to come from? And therefore, you have to learn at home. Your kids have to see you. For me, it was a very big lesson, a very strong musar. And therefore, make sure we create in the house a beautiful culture and temperature. What are the pictures that we're hanging on the walls? Are we putting up pictures of maybe avant-garde art? Are we putting up pictures of celebrities? Who are our heroes? Do we have maybe somewhere in the house a picture of a rabbi, Talmidei Chachamim? So this way our children see how much we value it. And when they see it in us, then they themselves will have it. The Ben Ish Chai says, a little bit in a scary sense, the Ben Ish Chai says how a lot of times you see how a rabbi's son becomes a businessman, and you see how a businessman's son becomes a rabbi. And he offers maybe a reason why. And he says, because the businessman doing well in business, what does he do all day? He speaks to rabbis. I spoke to my rabbi today. I'm going to visit my rabbi. I'm taking my rabbi with me on a trip. We're going to visit the kever. We're going to visit this place. We're going to visit this holy site. And all day, what does the businessman talk about? The rabbi, the rabbi, the rabbi. On the other hand, what does the rabbi talk about all day? The rabbi is learning all day. The rabbi is a rabbi all day. When he comes home, he speaks to his wife how it's so difficult, how they're not making it financially. It's tough times. What do? We need money. Maybe I could try to work over here a little bit. I could try to rub over there. And the son of the businessman, all day he hears his father talk about the rabbi. And the son of the rabbi, all day he hears him talk about the businessman, the money. Says the Ben Ish Chai, that's why the kids came out the way they came out. Because the son of the rabbi hears money, so he thinks his dad loves money. And the son of the businessman hears all day rabbi, and he realizes how much his father loves the rabbis, and he wants to be a rabbi. And therefore, again, make sure make sure that not only are we learning, but we have to also make sure that the learning is penetrating our houses, that we are being proper role models for our children. Okay, then he continues and says, make sure you're also mit'abek be'afar raglehem. Make sure you stay close to the dust on their feet. Now again, on a simple level, that means that you should stick to them, whatever they tell you, follow them, follow their advice. Sometimes maybe it doesn't sound like it has wisdom, but to stick to them. On a deeper level, where is there ever dust on a rabbi's feet? You know, a rabbi usually sits down, there's no dust in the study hall. There's nice air conditioning. Where's there dust? There's no dust. The dust of the feet, the dirt of the feet is when the rabbi's on the go. When the rabbi's traveling, when the rabbi's walking, they're going from place to place, from city to city. And says the Mishnah, that's when you should be close to your rabbi. Meaning, of course, with the rabbis, when we're learning. But says over here, Yossi ben Yo'ezer, even when your rabbi is not learning, even when your rabbi is just going to play basketball, even when your rabbi is going on a regular family trip, even when your rabbi is just going from through the streets, he's going for a walk in the park, even when there's dust on his feet, over there you should also stay close to him. Because there's a lot that we can learn from our rabbis when they are not in learning mode. And that means how a lot of times the way our rabbis live, their conduct, just the day-to-day, the regular, like the pasuk says, Ve'alehu lo yibol bat tzaddik, even the leaves, even the regular talk, the regular chatter, watching what rabbis do. Rav Gifter said, I learned a lot from my rabbi in the study hall, but I learned even more from him in the walks in the park. And that means that just watching how your rabbi acts when he's regular, seeing how he is patient, seeing how he conducts himself. Ad kedei kach, so much so that in the times of the Gemara, there was once a student who went into his rabbi's bedroom and he hid under the bed even to learn how to conduct oneself in the bedroom with one's wife. That's how far the student went. And the rabbi realized, he says, oh, okay, this is not appropriate. But that's how far the kid thought. Even here, I need to observe my rabbi. Not in a perverted way, but in a holy way. Even this, I must learn from the ways of the Chachamim. So this is unbelievable advice. Again, I remember personally, going back to my rabbi, Rabbi Prague, I used to get a lift with him every day from the shul to the high school where I would teach. And I would just sitting in the car for 20 minutes and seeing how he drove and seeing how he thought and seeing what he said and watching his patience behind the wheel. For me, I learned more in those 20-minute drives than I ever learned from him behind the Gemara. And this is what the Mishnah is teaching us. Stick even to the dust of their feet, meaning even when they're walking. Follow them, observe them. You can learn a lot from how they conduct themselves, even in a natural setting, especially in a natural setting. Maybe a slightly deeper interpretation. The word mit'abek we find in the Perashah when Yaakov Avinu is going back to Israel, Perashat Vayishlach. And it says that he's alone on one side of the river after he crosses his family over, and he's alone. And the pasuk says that he sees a man and they fight all night long. And the pasuk says, Vaye'avek ishimo. What does it mean, Vaye'avek? They fought all night long. The word avek means to fight. Have mit'abek. That same word, avak, mit'abek. Maybe our rabbis are telling us that the goal when we learn shouldn't just be to sit back, relaxed, with a scotch and a nice, eating the bizir, eating the seeds, and nodding at everything the rabbi says. That's not the way to learn. The way to learn is to fight, to argue. Something, it has to bother us maybe what the rabbi is saying. Rabbi, I don't know if I agree to that. I love when I hear that from my students. The worst class is when I walk in and I give the class and the students are just writing it like zombies on the piece of paper, and they walk out and no one asked a question, no one was bothered. How could it be I spoke for 45 minutes, nobody disagrees to anything I said? Then what am I coming for? If everything that I'm teaching you over here is so obvious, nothing bothers you, nothing strikes a chord, nothing resonated, Mitabek, we gotta fight. We gotta find, we have to have questions, we have to have issues, we have to have doubts. To be curious. To be curious. Rabbi Norman Lamb says over the powerful story. He was once in a shir by, I believe it was the Rav, the Soloveitchik Rav Soloveitchik. And the rabbi gave a class and he made a mistake, but no one caught the mistake. They just wrote down the notes and they were paying attention and the rabbi said it and they believed it, they wrote it down. And the next day the rabbi came into the class and he was furious. And he says, yesterday I was giving a class and I said something that was completely going against the Gemara, something black and white. And not one of you kids corrected me. And you know what the problem with you boys is? You come to learn and you check your Yetzer Hara by the door. And you come in to learn with your Yetzer HaTov. I don't want to learn with your Yetzer HaTov. Yetzer HaTov is a goody two-shoes. He's boring. I want to learn with your Yetzer Hara. I want you to come with the same energy and fighting that you go. When you go to debate with your friends politics. When you go to debate with your friends on sports. This player's better. That player's better. This politician. This policy. I want you to bring that same energy and fight me in the Bet Midrash. That's what it means. We have to be bothered. We have to be curious. We have to be excited. When God told Noah to build the ark, why did he build an ark for 120 years? 120 years he built an ark. You know why? So that people will come over and say, hey, what are you doing? And he would answer them, well, I'm building an ark. Why are you building an ark? Because there's going to be a flood. A flood? Why? Because Hashem's angry. And to get into a dialogue and he would hopefully bring people on board. Literally. But what happened? 120 years, nobody came on. But the rabbis wonder, why did he have to build an ark for 120 years? Maybe it would have been better to build a podium and then to just stand there and preach for 120 years. Rabotai, there's going to be a flood. But that's not what he did. He didn't build a podium. He built an ark because it was important and it's vital that in life, the person should ask. It's not enough that you get up there and just give a speech. You get up and give a lecture because it ain't going to be absorbed. It's much more powerful when there's a question. When there's a question, now the person is curious, now he's bothered. That's why always in class I was taught as a teacher to begin the lesson with an aim. And the aim should always be a question that would pique the interest, arouse the curiosity of the students. And therefore, so important to make sure, Amela said it, as an example, we're forced to ask. Even if you're very smart, you have to ask. Man ishtana halayla. You have to ask the question. Because if you don't ask questions, if it doesn't bother you, then why should you pay attention? Why should you pay attention? As parents, we would be very wise on the Shabbat table to throw a question. Because now our kids, that's a good question. Don't just speak. Don't just say Dvar Torah. Nice. Say Dvar Torah, but begin the Dvar Torah with a question. And stop and let the people around the table answer. So who can tell me? Why did Avraham invite the guests if it was, right? Just ask a question. Get people's brains involved, engaged, arouse, again, the curiosity. That's what it means. Heveh mitabek, to fight. Don't just take the rabbi's word for it. You're sitting in a Gemara class. Two rabbis, you see them, chavruta, they're screaming, they're yelling. It's called milhamta shel Torah. It's the war, it's the battle of Torah. There has to be a battle, there has to be fighting. Good type of fighting. And finally, veheve shoteh betzama et devrehem. One needs to drink with thirst the words of the rabbis. And here we have something very, very powerful. When it comes to mitzvot, what should be the correct approach to mitzvot? Are we supposed to do the mitzvot because they're rational? Are the mitzvot supposed to be sensical? Are we supposed to say, this mitzvah, I do it and it's a good mitzvah? Or is a person supposed to say, this mitzvah doesn't make sense to me. It's really, if you ask me, it doesn't. But, I don't know, God said, so here I am, I'm going to do it anyways. What's better? What's a higher level? A person who does the mitzvah and that doesn't make sense to him, or a person who it makes sense to him, and therefore he does it? The Rambam answers this question, and the Rambam says it's better It's better, and it's not the Rambam. It's even the Chazal, our rabbis. A person shouldn't say, as an example, when it comes to pork, right? You're walking by a bakery, you're walking by a not kosher restaurant, and your kid says, "Wow, what a yummy smell." What should we tell our children? What should we tell ourselves? Nah, it's pork. Ew, disgusting. Lishech, right? Or, yeah, it's a good smell, but we can't have it. What's the right answer? So the Chazal say, the second one. A person should say, you know what? I wish I could eat it. I wish I could have not kosher. It looks so good. I wish I could, do this. I wish I could. But Hashem said, and therefore I'm not. So always, when it comes to mitzvot, it's better to have the urge and overcome it, right? We should say, I wish I could violate this sin. Oh my gosh, I'm really tempted to drive today. Oh, I want to go to that party, but it's Shabbat, I can't. That's a much higher level than a person who doesn't even want to go to the party, right? Now, if a person once upon a time started off with that level, that they had an urge, and they build it to the point that they no longer have an urge, that's even greater. That's even greater. Now you build it into your habit that on Shabbat we don't do this, we don't eat these foods, so you're not even tempted anymore. But in general, a person who is maybe born without the desire versus someone who does have the desire and overcomes it, it's greater to have the desire and to overcome it. What about Torah? What should be the correct approach when it comes to Torah? Also, should we say the same thing? I don't really enjoy learning, but I learn because Hashem said. I don't really enjoy, keeping Shabbat, but I do it because Hashem said, right? And the answer our Mishnah is giving us is that the only exception to the mitzvot, at least the mitzvot that are meant to God, is the learning of Torah. When it comes to learning, our attitude cannot and should not be that, I don't really want to learn, but I'll learn anyways. When it comes to Torah, there has to be an enjoyment. One needs to drink with thirst. When it comes to the Torah, we have to, the same way when you're thirsty. Were you ever thirsty? I think so, right? I'm thirsty right now. I'm going to have a drink, but I'm excited to drink. Quenching my thirst. Oh my gosh, beautiful water. The same way you're thirsty for Torah, for water, and you drink it, one needs to be thirsty for Torah. Why? Why if I'm not thirsty is not good? What if I drink Torah without thirst? Because Mishnah is saying again, drink Torah when you're thirsty. What if I'm not thirsty? Rabbi, I'm not thirsty. I don't want to learn. But I'll learn because I know it's the right thing. But I don't really enjoy it. I'm not excited. And I spend the rest of my life learning without excitement. Is that good or no? No good. The Mishnah says, you got to drink it with thirst. You know why? It's a super important point of here. Because the only way Torah will be absorbed in a person is if they're excited when they're learning it. If we're enjoying the learning. If we're learning and we're a little bit not excited, maybe we're doing the act, maybe we're understanding, but it won't be absorbed. It won't penetrate. When the only Torah will ever penetrate us is the Torah that we learn through simcha. And that's one of the brachot that we say in the morning. V'ha'arevna. V'ha'arevna. What does that mean when we say the blessings of the Torah every morning? And I hope you all say them because it's very beautiful blessings to say. And the blessing, we don't just say Hashem commanded us to learn, but we also say Hashem, please, v'ha'arev, let the Torah be sweet. Let me enjoy. If you're learning and you're not enjoying it, that's a problem. Then maybe, you need to check who you're learning from. Maybe you're not enjoying my class. You got to get a different class. I hope not. But maybe we should pray for learning, for enjoying. You should say, Hashem, I want to enjoy. Maybe we're not using our head enough. Maybe we're not engaging enough. Maybe we're not reading it enough. Maybe we're not studying enough. Maybe we're not breaking our heads enough. We need to walk out feeling good about the learning that we did. And it's a prayer. V'ha'arev. There's no other bracha in the world that we say, Hashem, let me enjoy. There's no mitzvah to enjoy other mitzvot. But when it comes to learning, we need to enjoy it. And that's why our rabbis say, Le'olam, Le'olam, forever. A person should always engage in Torah study. Shelo lishma. Le'olam ya'asok adam. Shelo lishma. A person should learn even when they're not altruistic. Meaning, sometimes you go to a class, you don't really want to learn, but you're going because you know there's going to be a nice looking girl in the class, there's going to be a cute boy in the class, maybe I'll go out with her, with him, maybe we'll get married. So you're going for the guy, you're going for the girl. Or they're having good sushi, I'll go for the sushi. You're going for the food. Is that good or bad? That's good. Mishnah says it. Learn even lo lishma. It's okay. Because, why? From lo lishma, it'll lead to lishma. That means, when you learn for the wrong reason, it'll eventually bring you to learn for the right reason. Asks Rav Hutner, if you notice, it doesn't say that by any other mitzvah. It doesn't say you should pray shelo lishma because shelo lishma brings lishma. It doesn't say it. It doesn't say you should do chesed and that'll lead to lishma. It doesn't say it. It doesn't say it by shaking a lulav or by hearing shofar. Come to shul and hear the shofar, even if you're coming for the wrong reason, because eventually you'll hear it for the right. It doesn't say it. Only mitzvah it says it by is by learning Torah. You know why? Because if you don't enjoy other mitzvot, that's fine. There's no goal to enjoy a mitzvah. You go your whole life, you lit Shabbat candles, you never enjoyed a single second of it. It's fine. You put tefillin every day, you don't enjoy it, no problem. You want to sit in a sukkah, shake a lulav, you don't enjoy it, no problem. You eat matzah, you don't like matzah, eat it anyways. But when it comes to learning Torah, the mitzvah is to enjoy the learning. You got to drink it like you're thirsty. You got to enjoy. God, I want to taste good. And therefore a person may wonder and say, well, if I don't enjoy it, if the whole purpose of this specific mitzvah is to enjoy it, and I don't, then maybe I don't need to do it. Maybe if I'm not happy when I learn, I shouldn't learn. Because again, any other mitzvah, I don't need to enjoy it. But when it comes to this mitzvah, I do. So maybe if I'm not enjoying, I shouldn't learn. And therefore comes the Mishnah and says, don't worry, learn anyways. Because from the lo lishma, it'll lead to lishma. When you don't enjoy and you start off learning, sometimes in life, there's a saying that eating leads to appetite. You go to a restaurant, just not in the mood. That's why, the way, you know what an appetizer is? That's what an appetizer means. The goal of an appetizer is to give you an appetite. I don't know if you ever realized that. But that's what an appetizer is. The point of an appetizer today, people make their meal out of an appetizer, which is, by the way, it's a good move. You go to a restaurant, you could probably order 8 appetizers, and it's better than the main course sometimes, the appetizers, right? Because the goal of an appetizer is to give you an appetite. You go to a restaurant, you're not hungry, but you eat, and you start off eating when you're not hungry, and the eating leads to appetite. Yes, we understand that? Beautiful. The same is with learning. You're not in the mood, learn anyways. You're not excited to open the daf right now. I know you committed to do it, and you didn't want to. Start off doing it. Do it anyways. And you'll see in a few minutes, wow, look at this. All of a sudden I'm hungry. Let's go. I eat a steak. Hit me. What happened? You didn't even want a piece of bread before. Yeah, but I started eating, and the eating led to appetite. And therefore, says the Mishnah, if you're not excited to learn, learn anyways. And that will lead to the enjoyment of learning. Something that I think is very true, myself included. I'm not always excited. You open it up. Rabbi Yosef, a guy once came to me and says, Rabbi, I don't have a cheshik to learn. In English that means, Rabbi, I don't have a desire to learn. What do I do? And Rabbi Yosef laughed and he said, if I only learned when I had a cheshik, I wouldn't be Rabbi Yosef today. That means that if you want to become great in life, even the Gedolim, they weren't always excited to learn. But you learn. And in a few minutes, the excitement comes. The excitement will follow. The appetite will follow the eating. Okay? So that's all one way of understanding these words, to drink with thirst. Meaning, there has to be, eventually the goal of learning should be to enjoy the learning. And if we're not enjoying it, We have to ask ourselves why. Maybe it's not stimulating enough. Maybe the learning that we're doing is too passive. Listening to a class, it's nice, but it's very passive. You're not going to enjoy if you watch a football game. It's not as enjoyable as playing a football game. When you win a game that you played, it's much nicer than when you watch a game that was won by your team. You have to get involved. You watch a rabbi give a class. That's nice. It's not enjoyable, no problem. But you also need to engage. We have to maybe use our heads a little bit more, maybe a little bit more proactive learning. Also, on top of the classes that we're doing. And then we'll enjoy it. But there is one more point. And that is to make sure maybe the Mishnah is telling us something a little bit slightly different, but it's also very important. That is to make sure that the first things that enter our heads, the first thing that enters our children's head, are the words of Torah. Our rabbis tell us when a kid starts learning, when a kid starts speaking, right away, teach him Torah, Tsiva lanu Moshe. Right? A lot of times when our kids learn how to talk, we're teaching them silly sayings, we're teaching them nonsense songs. No. The first words we should teach our children, Torah, Tsiva lanu Moshe, Morasha Keilat Yaakov. When we're young, we're excited. When we're thirsty for knowledge. A lot of times, a kid is thirsty for knowledge, especially when they're bar mitzvah or right before bar mitzvah. A parent will come and say, Rabbi, my kid, he loves learning. You know what that means? Your kid loves learning. Beautiful. Feed him. No, but Rabbi, I'm scared. He's going to get too religious. Don't get scared. This is the time. If you don't feed him now, if you don't quench that thirst today, the thirst is going to go away. It's going to be filled by other types of thoughts, by alien thoughts, by other ideas. And that is very, very dangerous. Make sure that we drink the words of Torah when we're thirsty, i.e., when we're young. The first things that should enter our minds, our children's heads, are the words of Torah, the ideas of Torah. Rav Moshe Feinstein once was asked a question and he gave the ruling. And the fellow wrote back, he says, Rabbi, I don't know if you're correct. I don't think this is the right way. I think it's a mistake. And Rav Moshe Feinstein said, he wrote back to this gentleman, and he said, you went through life, you went to college, you went to university, you read other books. He says, me, the only thing in my head is Torah. If this is what I'm telling you, that means that's what the Torah would say. Rav Moshe Feinstein. So we have to make sure that we're teaching our kids Torah, at least in the beginning, when it's a blank canvas, when it's a fresh mind, to make sure that the words of the Torah are being absorbed. Because you know what? The Gemara tells us there's something called Girsa de Yankuta. You know what that means? Girsa de Yankuta. It means what you learned as a kid. I know, and I'm sure you know, the things that you learned as a kid, they stay in your head forever. A lot of things I heard in a class yesterday, and I forget them. But what I learned when I was 8, I still remember 20 years later. Because when the mind is young, when the brain is still fresh, whatever goes into it, it stays there. And therefore, make sure you teach your kids Torah when they're thirsty, meaning when they're young. The first things that should go into their heads, and whatever we teach them is so valuable, that will stay. Don't let them memorize and waste their time on TV shows. Let them memorize the words of Torah. Teach them Mishnayot. Teach them Pesukim. This is the time where it's going to stay in forever. It's such a beautiful opportunity. And that's what maybe what the Pasuk means, says Rabbi Bernstein. Ve'hayu advarim ha'ele, let the words of Torah be al levavecha. What does that mean, al levavecha? Directly on the heart, before other ideas get there. Make sure the Torah comes first. Because if the Torah comes second, it will be very difficult for it to stick. Unbelievable idea, very powerful. I want to read to you a story in the Navi. Okay, I always encourage the Navi. From time to time, it's good to study the stories in the Navi. I want to take you to the book of Shemuel Bet, chapter 17. 16. When David HaMelech was on the run. Okay? Now you may wonder, which time was he on the run? He was on the run many times, correct? David was on the run many times in his life. David HaMelech, one of the most dynamic figures in the entire Tanakh. How many times he had to run away from his family, from his father-in-law, from his own son. So here we are towards the end of his life when he was running from his own son. Believe it or not, his son wanted to take over. His son wanted to even kill him. David HaMelech runs away from his son. And on the run, David avar me'arosh, he's passed a little bit past the mountain, the summit. And all of a sudden, I want to tell you about, you ready? Listen to the story. Tsiva, this man by the name of Tsiva. Who was Tsiva? He was the servant of Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was from the family of Shaul HaMelech. Okay? So Shaul, let's get the history. Shaul HaMelech was the first king in Jewish history. Good? Shaul lost the kingship to David HaMelech. Now David's the king. Shaul has a grandson, I believe. His name is Mephibosheth. And now David HaMelech is the king. Mephibosheth is very excited. If David dies, he'll be the king again, right? So Tsiva was the servant of Mephibosheth, and he comes towards David, and he has donkeys carrying 200 loaves of bread, and 100 cakes of raisin, and 100 cakes of figs, and a jar of wine. And David asks Tsiva, "What are you doing with all of these? What are you doing with these foods?" Tsiva says, "The donkeys are for you, my lord, and to ride on. The bread, the figs, they're for you and your people to eat. The wine is for you guys to drink because you're probably exhausted running away." And then David asks Tsiva, "And where is your master? Where is, what's his name? Mephibosheth?" Tsiva, look what Tsiva says. He didn't come with me. He's not loyal to you. He's waiting in Jerusalem. And he says, he thinks, hopefully, that you'll die and the house of Israel will be restored to his grandfather's throne. Okay? So now Mephibosheth, Tsiva, is spreading a lie about Mephibosheth. Well, we don't know if it's a lie. If you're David HaMelech, what do? Do you know if he's telling the truth? You don't know. But he says, listen, here I am, I'm alone. Mephibosheth didn't come with me because he doesn't have allegiance to you. He hopes you die in battle, and then he becomes the king again. Okay, so what does the king do? The king says to Tsiva, well, if that's the case, then all that belongs to Mephibosheth, all of his property, his real estate, all his money, now belongs to you. And Tsiva bows and he says, wow, I'm so grateful, thank you so much, your majesty. Well, eventually the battle goes on and Avshalom dies, and David becomes the king, and the re-accepted king, and he's able to now go back to his throne in Jerusalem. Fast forward a few chapters to chapter 19. Now we read, as David gets back to Jerusalem, who's in trouble? Who's going to now be in trouble? Mephibosheth, right? Because Mephibosheth didn't pay homage, he didn't come to visit David. Well, let's watch this. Mephibosheth ben Shaul, Mephibosheth, the grandson of Shaul, comes to greet the king. Now, David, he holds his, he wins the re-election, and he's coming back to Jerusalem. So Mephibosheth goes out to greet him. Velo asar raglav, lo asas famo. He didn't get a haircut. He came like he was in a state of mourning, which you can imagine is disrespectful. When you come to the king, you shave, you cut your nails. He didn't do any of that. When he comes from Jerusalem to meet the king says to him, why did you come to me, Mephibosheth? Were you not loyal to me? You're not on my side? Because if that's the case, then I kill you, right? You're guilty of treason. What's Mephibosheth going to say? What's your excuse? When I was on the run, you didn't come to follow me? You didn't have allegiance to me? Vayomar, he says, Adoni HaMelech, my dear king, my servant deceived me. Who's his servant? Who's Mephibosheth's servant? Tsiva, right? He says, my servant deceived me. Why? Your servant took the donkey and he rode off alone without me. And after all, I am lame. I can't walk. I'm handicapped. And I'm sure he slandered me to you. And he probably told you lies. But you should know, I wanted to come, but I had no transportation. He took my donkey. And he came and he lied to you. He told me I probably was, I had my allegiance to your son. I wanted you to die. It's not true. Ki lo haya kol bet avi ki iman shema ve'ladoni hamelech. After all, I have my allegiance fully to you. Vayomer lo hamelech. So the king says back, well, if that's the case, you and Tsiva split the field. You and Tsiva will split the... Remember how I said to Tsiva that the real estate is all his? I changed my mind. 50-50. Mephibosheth says, listen, you can do whatever you want. Give it all to him. If you don't believe me, what do I care? Give it all to him. And the commentaries ask, well, it's an interesting story. But at the end of the day, who do you believe, David? If you believe the first guy, Tsiva, then you should kill Mephibosheth. And if you believe Mephibosheth, then you should return all of the field back to him. And the answer that's given is that David really believed Mephibosheth. And you listen to this, my friends. David believed Mephibosheth. He believed the second guy. However, since he already heard Tsiva's side of the story first, he was no longer able to get rid of it from his mind. He already had a slight bias towards Tsiva, and therefore he couldn't bring himself to give all of the land back to Mephibosheth. Instead, he split it 50-50. Look at the danger of what we hear first in life. Always we're a little bit biased to that opinion, to that side. Matter of fact, a judge is not allowed to hear one side of the testimony. When there are two litigants, he cannot hear the argument of one side if the other side isn't present. Because once you hear one side first, you're automatically tilting towards that side. You're biased. And a lot of times, it's unfortunate, but that's the case when it comes to fake news. There are so many outlets out there that know how to do such a good job. When it comes to lies, they know how to spread lies. They know how to put lies about Israel and how they killed the journalist. And then when we show without a shadow of a doubt that it wasn't us, they print a correction all the way back on some page, 58 on tiny print, but the damage is done. The news was already spread, the gossip was spread, the lies were spread. So this is again something that we have to be very careful of, but just to show you how powerful the first is, always the first things that we learn, the first things that we do when we wake up, modeh ani lefanecha, to always start off on the right foot, to make sure that when our children are hungry to learn, the first thing that we put in their heads, the first thing that go in their minds, when they're hungry, when they're thirsty, is put the words of Torah. Heve shoteh betzama et divrehem. Rav Pinchas Scheinberg, and we'll end with this. Rav Pinchas Scheinberg was, he grew up, over here in New York. He was a New York boy. He actually loved baseball. He was a pitcher, I believe. And eventually he moved to Israel and he became one of the greatest giants of the generation. And he was once visiting in America many decades later. And he was sitting in the taxi and the radio was on, and the taxi, the whatever station it was, the sports or maybe the news going through the recap of the day. And all of a sudden the announcer says how the Yankees won the World Series, or they won a playoff game, I don't know what it was. And Rav Scheinberg was sitting in the back, his son was next to him, and he starts smiling. And his son was very surprised that my father is smiling that the Yankees won. Who cares about the Yankees? He says, Abba, what's going on? You're a Yankee fan still? And Rav Pinchas Scheinberg says, I grew up a Yankee fan. And I loved the Yankees growing up, and my entire life, I was always in the back of my mind somewhere, I would be back in America, I would wonder how are the Yankees doing. And finally, I could confidently say today, as I overheard the announcer say that the Yankees won, it made zero difference to me. Finally now, fast forward 70 years, I'm able to not care anymore about the Yankees. That's why I smiled. But look how powerful the impression was of a sports game, even on a rabbi. It took him 70 years to get rid of those thoughts, to get rid of the simcha, the excitement that he had for a sports team. So again, my point is not Yankees. You want to be a Yankee fan, that's good, nothing wrong. And my point is, look how delicate the early years of our children's lives, to make sure that we are painting beautiful thoughts, painting beautiful experiences, not only with Torah, even the relationships, even the words that we say to them. They could scar them if they're the wrong words. They could haunt them in 20 years down the line. To make sure we speak to our children with love, to make sure we talk to them with happiness, to make sure we create positive experiences. It won't matter in 20 years if our children washed the plate, or they didn't wash their hands, or they touched the chair with the dirty fingerprints. That won't matter. What will matter is the mark that we left on their minds, on their hearts, the way we spoke to them. That's the only thing that really matters. Okay, so to make sure in this very delicate and important and impressionable age, we are making sure to leave the correct footage in the minds of our children. Okay, I think there's a lot of beautiful points over here to think about and to review. We'll stop over here. May Hashem bless us all to be always able to have our houses filled with Torah, whether it's Torah books or Torah rabbis or pictures of Torah and pictures of rabbis, to always make sure that we are giving into our children the importance of Torah, and to stick to the legs, to the dust of their feet, in whatever sense that means, and to drink with the water, with the thirst of water, the words of Torah. Stop over here. Have a wonderful day. God willing, we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.